harsh reality of dating older women. She just bought her second investment property while you're celebrating finally paying off your student loans. You show up to her place. It's got heated floors and original artwork on the walls. Your apartment has a futon and a poster you hung up with thumbtacks. And right there, standing in her kitchen that's bigger than your entire living room, something clicks. This relationship exists in the space between two completely different versions of adult life. Welcome to Psyche Shift, where we explore the messy, complicated truth about human connections. No fluff, no fantasy, just real psychology about what happens when relationships cross boundaries most people don't want to examine closely. Dating someone 10 or 15 years older sounds exciting in theory. There's this appeal to it, right? Someone established, confident, done with the drama that defined your early 20s, except nobody prepares you for what happens 3 months in when reality starts creeping through the cracks. The first shock comes when you realize how differently you both think about time itself. You've got years stretching ahead of you like an open highway. Career changes? Sure, you can pivot at 32. Want to backpack through South America for 6 months. Your life can handle that disruption. Still figuring out what you actually want, you've got runway to experiment. Time feels abundant because it is. Now flip that perspective. When you're 38 or 42, time stops being theoretical. Every year carries weight. Career moves need to be strategic, not exploratory. 6 months traveling isn't adventure. It's 6 months not building toward retirement. And figuring out what you want, that needed to happen a decade ago because decisions have consequences that compound. This creates tension in ways you won't see coming. You suggest taking a year off to try starting a business, and she looks at you like you just proposed setting money on fire. Not because the idea is bad, but because her relationship with risk completely changed after 35. She's thinking about security in concrete terms while you're still operating in possibilities. Ryan, a 31-year-old graphic designer, learned this the hard way. He'd been dating Vanessa, who was 43 and ran her own consulting firm. 6 months in, he got excited about an opportunity to freelance full-time and ditch his stable job. To him, it was finally chasing his dream. To her, it was watching someone make the exact mistake she had seen ruin people financially. She didn't say don't do it, but the enthusiasm gap was massive. He felt unsupported. She felt like she was dating someone who hadn't learned basic life lessons yet. Neither was wrong. They were just living in different decades of risk tolerance. What throws most guys off is how quickly things get serious, or how quickly they end. There's no middle speed with these relationships. Think about dating someone your own age. You can casually see each other for months, even a year, without major pressure about defining things. You're both in the exploration phase of life. Taking it slow makes sense. But when she's already established, already knows what works for her, already filtered through the nonsense that younger people still tolerate, the casual phase lasts maybe 2 months, tops. After that, she's evaluating. Not in a cold, calculating way, just in a, does this fit into my actual life? Or am I just enjoying the distraction way? Because here's the psychological reality. People who've built substantial lives don't have room for relationships that exist in a holding pattern. Either you're adding value to the structure they've created, or you're a pleasant interlude before they find someone who does. That evaluation process can feel harsh when you're used to relationships that unfold slowly, organically, without constant checkpoints. Suddenly you're getting questions about your 5-year vision, your thoughts on where you want to live long term, how you handle money, what your family relationships look like. It's not an interrogation, it's someone with limited time doing appropriate due diligence. Chris experienced this acceleration with a woman named Lauren who was 12 years older. 3 months in, she wanted to know if he saw himself getting married in the next few years. He panicked because he barely knew if he wanted to stay at his current job. She ended things a week later, kindly but definitively. "I really like you," she told him, "but I can't spend another year in something that might not go anywhere. It's not fair to either of us." He was devastated. From his perspective, 3 months was barely enough time to know someone. From hers, 3 months was plenty of time to recognize a fundamental mismatch in urgency. Now we need to talk about something that makes people uncomfortable, but shapes everything, the kid question, if she's anywhere. Between 35 and 42, biology is a loud voice in every relationship decision she makes. Maybe she already has kids and isn't interested in more. Maybe she desperately wants them and knows the window is closing. Maybe she's ambivalent but aware that ambivalence will become a decision by default in a few years. Whatever her position, it's not theoretical anymore. You, at 28 or 32, probably think about kids as something that happens eventually. Sure, you want them someday, when you're more established, when you meet the right person, when it feels right. Your timeline is fuzzy because biology gives you the luxury of fuzziness. This creates one of the most painful disconnects in age gap relationships. You're both saying you want the same thing, a family, but you're operating on incompatible clocks. When she says she wants kids, she means she needs to be pregnant within 18 months, or she's looking at fertility treatments, higher risks, or aging out of the possibility entirely. When you say you want kids, you mean it's definitely part of your vision for your late 30s. The math doesn't work, and nobody's the villain here, but someone ends up heartbroken. I spoke with a guy named Julian who went through this exact scenario. He was 29, dating a woman named Stephanie who was 39. They fell hard for each other. 6 months felt like 6 years in terms of connection. Then came the conversation. She wanted to start trying for a baby within the next year. He wanted kids for sure, but thought they should live together first, be engaged, really solidify things, probably start trying around age 32 or 33. You can do the math on why that relationship ended. She didn't want to pressure him into something he wasn't ready for. He couldn't speed up his internal timeline just because hers was urgent. They loved each other and still walked away because the logistics were impossible. That's the brutal honesty nobody shares when they talk about these relationships. Love doesn't conquer timeline incompatibility. It just makes the ending hurt more. Let's shift gears and talk about what happens in your actual day-to-day life together, because that's where the age gap shows up in 1,000 small ways. Your cultural references don't align. She makes a joke about a song from the 90s, and you weren't born yet when it came out. You reference a meme, and she has absolutely no context. These seem like tiny things until they happen 40 times a week, and you start to feel like you're living in slightly different worlds. The energy mismatch gets real. You want to go to a concert on a Tuesday night and rally for work the next day on 5 hours of sleep. She did that in her 20s and knows exactly how terrible she'll feel, so it's a hard pass. You want to try that new restaurant that doesn't take reservations, which means showing up at 9:30 and waiting for an hour. She's looking at an 11 p.m. dinner time and wondering why anyone would choose that kind of chaos. Neither person is wrong. You're just in different life phases. You still have the recovery speed and the tolerance for inconvenience that comes with youth. She's optimized her life to avoid unnecessary discomfort because experience taught her those things aren't actually fun. They're just tolerable when you don't know better yet. What this creates is a slow drift in how you spend time together. You start defaulting to her preferences because she's less flexible, more set in what works for her. Gradually, you're having dinner parties at her place instead of checking out dive bars. You're doing weekend trips to nice hotels instead of spontaneous road trips sleeping in the car. You're living her lifestyle because it's already established and yours is still forming. Some guys love this. They're ready to level up, ready to adopt a more refined way of living. Others start to feel like they're skipping chapters of their own development, jumping from the chaos of their 20s straight into the settled comfort of their 40s without getting to explore the in-between. What should you do when you notice this drift? Get honest about whether you're genuinely enjoying this lifestyle or just going along, because it's easier than pushing back. There's nothing wrong with wanting to stay out late and be spontaneous and do things that seem stupid in hindsight. That's developmentally appropriate for where you are. Don't abandon it just to keep pace with someone who's already past that phase. Social dynamics create another layer of complexity that blindsides most guys. Her friends scrutinize you with an intensity that your peer relationships never prepared you for. You're not just meeting people she knows, you're being assessed as a potential life partner by women who've watched her go through breakups, bad decisions, and heartbreak. They're protective in a way that feels almost parental. They ask probing questions. They watch how you treat her. They're looking for signs that you're not serious, that you're going to waste her time, that you're too immature to show up the way she needs. Meanwhile, your friends either treat the relationship like a punchline or can't understand what you see in someone so much older. You get a lot of nudges and winks when you mention her, like you've won some kind of prize, or you get concern disguised as curiosity. That's cool, man, but what's the deal with her? Why isn't she with someone her own age? Both friend groups, in their own way, make it harder to just exist in the relationship without constant external commentary. Nathan dealt with this when he was dating a woman named Isabel who was 14 years older. His college friends couldn't take the relationship seriously. They kept treating it like a phase, making jokes about him having a cool older girlfriend like it was some temporary adventure. Her friends, on the other hand, grilled him at a dinner party about his career trajectory and whether he was ready for something real. He left feeling like he'd failed a test he didn't know he was taking. You end up in this weird social limbo where neither friend group fully accepts the relationship, which means you're both somewhat isolated in it. That can either bring you closer together, us against the world, or it can add pressure that eventually cracks the foundation. One thing that never gets discussed is the power dynamic and how it plays out in arguments. When you disagree about something, she's got a decade plus of life experience to pull from. She's seen patterns, she's made mistakes and learned from them. She knows how certain decisions tend to play out based on having lived through them multiple times. You're operating more on theory, optimism, and limited data points. This can make arguments feel unbalanced. She's not just disagreeing with you. She's disagreeing from a place of knowing, something you don't know yet. And that's incredibly frustrating because you can't argue with lived experience you haven't had. You end up feeling talked down to even when she's genuinely just sharing what she's learned. At the same time, she's dealing with her own frustration. From her perspective, you're about to make a mistake she watched 3 different people make, and you won't listen because you need to learn it yourself. She wants to save you the trouble. You want to be treated like an equal, not a student. This dynamic showed up constantly in the relationship between Eric and a woman named Patricia, who was 16 years his senior. Whenever they'd argue about big decisions, moving in together, how to handle finances, whether to go on a trip, she'd reference similar situations from her past and what she'd learned. He'd feel like she was using her age as a trump card. She'd feel like he was being stubborn and refusing wisdom because of ego. Both were partly right. Finding balance here means she needs to share her experience without wielding it as authority, and you need to listen without defensiveness, while still advocating for your perspective. Easier said than done when the experience gap is real and shapes how you both see the world. Financial dynamics add yet another layer of complexity that most people underestimate. She probably makes more money than you. She's been working longer, climbing higher, building equity while you are still in college. This shows up everywhere. She picks restaurants you can't really afford. She books trips that stretch your budget. She has financial cushions and safety nets that you're still years away from building. You've got a few ways to handle this, and none of them feel great at first. You can try to keep up financially and stress yourself out or go into debt. You can let her pay for more things and deal with feeling like you're not contributing equally. You can restrict activities to what you can afford and watch her compromise her lifestyle to match your budget. Every option comes with its own psychological weight. The guys who navigate this best are the ones who get comfortable contributing in non-financial ways while being honest about their limitations. Cooking dinner at home instead of going out, planning creative, low-cost activities, being clear about budget constraints without shame. The key is bringing value that isn't measured in dollars while working toward your own financial growth. But there's a trap here too. Some women in these relationships unconsciously or consciously start treating financial contribution as a measure of partnership readiness. If you can't match her lifestyle, maybe you're not ready for her level of commitment. If you're still building your career while she's established, maybe the gap is too wide. Money becomes a proxy for readiness, maturity, stability, all the things she's evaluating. Let's get into the physical side of things, because this is where psychology meets biology in ways that create unexpected friction. Energy levels diverge as you get older. This isn't about fitness. Plenty of 40-year-olds are in better shape than 30-year-olds. It's about recovery, about how your body responds to stress and lack of sleep and physical demands. She might need more rest, more routine, more attention to health in ways you don't think about yet. This shows up in your sex life too, though not always in the ways people assume. Sometimes she's more sexually confident and experienced, which can be amazing. Other times, hormonal changes affect libido in ways neither of you anticipated. Sometimes the energy mismatch means desire doesn't sync up. You're ready to go and she's exhausted from a long week. The key is communication without making it about the age gap. The moment it becomes, you're always tired because you're older, or you don't understand because you're younger. You've created a dynamic that's hard to come back from. Instead, treat it like any other compatibility issue. Talk about needs, find compromises, stay curious rather than critical. One of the hardest parts is watching her encounter life changes that you're not even thinking about yet. Maybe she starts dealing with perimenopause symptoms. Maybe she's helping aging parents navigate health issues. Maybe she's thinking about long-term career shifts toward work-life balance while you're still in the hustle phase. You're supposed to be a partner through all of this, but you don't have reference points. You can't relate from experience, only from empathy, and sometimes that gap is obvious. So where does this leave you if you're actually in one of these relationships right now? First, stop trying to prove the age gap doesn't matter. It matters. Acknowledge it. Talk about it openly. The couples who make it work are the ones who treat it like a factor to navigate, not a secret to hide or a problem to overcome. Second, get brutally honest with yourself about timelines. If she wants kids and you're not ready for 3 or 4 years, end it now with kindness rather than later with resentment. If she's past the kid phase and you definitely want them, same thing. Don't stay hoping the other person will change their core needs. They won't. Third, make sure you're choosing her specifically, not the idea of dating an older woman. Strip away the appeal of dating someone established and ask yourself, do I actually enjoy spending time with this person? Do our values align? Are we compatible beyond the surface dynamics? If the relationship only works because of what the age gap provides, it doesn't actually work. Fourth, pay attention to whether you're growing together or growing apart. Are you learning from each other and evolving? Or is one person stuck trying to catch up while the other waits impatiently? Growth has to be mutual, even if it looks different for each of you. The relationships that survive do so because both people want the same things at the same time and are willing to navigate the complications together. The age gap becomes part of the relationship's texture, not its defining feature. You respect her experience without being diminished by it. She appreciates your perspective without condescending to it. You build something that works for both of you specifically, not for age gap relationships in general. Most of these relationships end. That's just statistical reality. The structural challenges are real. But the ones that make it, they're built on radical honesty, compatible timelines, mutual respect, and a willingness to deal with complexity instead of pretending it doesn't exist. If you're thinking about getting into one of these relationships, go in with eyes open. Understand what you're signing up for. Know that it will be harder in specific ways than dating someone your own age. Know that you'll face pressure and scrutiny and moments where the gap feels insurmountable, and then decide if the connection is worth it anyway. Because sometimes it is. Sometimes you meet someone who changes your understanding of what partnership looks like. Sometimes the complications are worth it because the person is worth it. Sometimes you're genuinely compatible in all the ways that matter, and the age gap is just logistics to manage rather than a fundamental flaw. But you can't know that until you're honest about what you're actually dealing with. Stop romanticizing it. Stop minimizing the real challenges. Look at the relationship clearly and decide if you're both willing to do the work it requires. That's the harsh reality. Age gap relationships aren't doomed, but they're not easy either. They require more maturity, more communication, more honesty, and more compatibility than relationships where you're both fumbling through the same life stage together. Some people have what it takes, most don't. The question is whether you're willing to find out which category you fall into and whether you can handle the answer either way.